chorus. Stop. Okay, good.
Well done, well done.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Uh, Thank you, Krishma, for pointing it out, and thank you for your patience. First, I would like to welcome you all and thank you all for coming today. Before I introduce a very important, prominent guest speaker, I'll just take a few minutes to tell you about our Chicago WZCC chapter. WZCC Chicago chapter is a part of World Zertusi Chamber of Commerce, a non-profit organization at a global level. The vision is to make the chamber the economic engine for the well-being and prosperity of the community. Our Chicago chapter of mission is to help and support each other and grow together as businesses and professionals, and in turn support and strengthen the community in every which way we can. I'm humbled and honored to be a chair of World Zertusi Chamber of Commerce Chicago chapter. By the way, this is our first hybrid Chicago event in person as well as on Zoom. So we have quite a few people sitting here with us. Normally, I try to give updates of the projects and activities of our chapter, but today we have a very interesting webinar. So I don't want to take away too much of your time. But there are a few housekeeping rules. Everyone will be muted throughout. Please put your questions in chat section and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. And people who are sitting on the table over here, I have put some note cards and you can write down the questions and we will answer. We will tell our presenter to answer those questions. So now let me tell you, when I was planning for this event, I was trying to understand myself how all these things tie together. Of course, I understand about the Gambhar, which has 4 attributes and we are following, like Yazat to pray, Sazat to perform duties, Kurat to partake of meal, and Dahat to donate. And some people have already voluntarily donated. And so, but how this connection, what's the connection between the Chamber of Commerce and the Cyrus cylinder? So somebody raised that question. So I asked Sam, and Sam, our guest speaker today, in Ziffy, in 2 minutes, he explained to me about the tie-ups. But I'm not going to tell you about that. We'll just leave it for Sam to tell you all that. So now let me introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Sam Billimoria. Mr. Sam Billimoria's interest in Cyrus started in 1970s when he worked for a shipping company in Iran for 6 years. He visited Persepolis 4 times and Passagrade twice. He came to Los Angeles in 1983 and has been a member of Zoroastrian Association of California since 1984. In 1993, he was able to get an audience with the US Congressman Ed Royce to provide him the evidence of frequent mention of Cyrus the Great and Achaemenian dynasty in the Old Bible, with Cyrus as the anointed one of God, and pioneering the first human rights in history. Based on that evidence, the Honorable Congressman, after due process, was very pleased to issue a proclamation which stated the immense and timeless contribution of the Zoroastrian community to human rights, democracy, history, and civilization through the offices of California State. He also pleased to forward The Dawn of Consciousness, a video produced by Miss Sillu Mehta on basic understanding of the Zoroastrian religion to the Library of Congress. It was readily accepted and placed in the Congress Library by the chief librarian. He was also appointed to the Honorable Congressman's Advisory Subcommittee on Human Rights and Southeast Asia following the 9/11 tragedy. In 2021, Sam got a similar proclamation from Honorable Congressman Luke Correa, honoring Zoroastrians all over the world for their outstanding contributions to history and civilization in pioneering the first human rights. Sam is currently a director, wellness public health coach, and conducts research and professionally makes presentation in public health. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Sam Billimoria.
Thank you, Mani, for that introduction. Navroz Mubarak, everybody. My name is Sam Billimoria, and I'm extremely honored to make this presentation on behalf of the Chicago chapter of World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Mani, for all your co-hosting and all your coordination. Thank you, Mr. Jamshed Ravitna, who has been very patient with me, and he will tell you some tales what happened when we were doing some test runs the other day. And thank you, Ervid Wispy, for helping us out today. So we will get on with the agenda now. And it is all about Cyrus the Great and Darius the Great. And it is timeless Zoroastrian legacy, and it is unfolding. Cyrus the Great executed a very high order of Asha, and he was a very righteous person. We will see the discovery of the cylinder and its replica in the United Nations building. We will see various aspects of human rights endowed by Cyrus. Some important writings on his cylinder with Bible references. And this is a real exponential kind of a thing. Darius the Great is administrative and commercial genius in legacy. And without overstating the case, you will see that his legacy is applied billions and billions with a B of times every day on this earth in every corner of the world. And we'll see that. Then this is divided into kind of three segments. So the first segment talks about Cyrus and Darius. Then the second segment, which you see in the red, is the influence of Cyropedia on the Enlightenment era. We'll talk about it, and the European democracy. Its influence on US founding fathers and US freedom and US Constitution. And then we'll come to the third segment. The third segment is direct Zoroastrian influence on Gandhi and colonial freedom. That is the direct influence on Gandhi, and indirectly through Gandhi, the Zoroastrian legacy influence on Martin Luther King and Obama through Gandhi. And then we'll have a look at some monuments and icons. So who was Cyrus? He was born around 590 BCE and he died in 529 BCE. He is one of the most benevolent conquerors of all time, as said in the National Geographic magazine 2019. He fortified the Achaemenid Empire and the dynasty, and that was the first superpower in history. They controlled 44% of the world's population. He was followed by Darius, Success, Artaxerxes, all mentioned in the Bible. He conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, liberating the Jews from captivity and restating them to Jerusalem. He is venerated in the Hebrew Bible as a Messiah, and a Messiah is a messenger of God. Now, we all know the core and the centrality of Zoroastrian religion is based in Asha. It's anchored in Asha. And Asha has got many aspects, and hence it is extremely difficult to execute. The aspects of Asha are truth, law, order, beauty, righteousness, purity, and freedom, with the subsets of justice, equality, piety, love, peace, and charity. And that is why it is so difficult to execute. Now, let me tell you something about the purity in truth. Thou shalt tell the truth and nothing but the truth. So there is nothing, ladies and gentlemen, like white lies and diplomacy as far as truth in Asha is concerned. It's a disorder to do that. And the freedom we are talking about is the vertical freedom, the catharsis of the soul, where one day in a distant future, we will be meeting the event with Varshakarati and be one with Ahura Mazda. Cyrus was trained with his father in wisdom and righteousness. There, you see the aspects of Pasha coming in already. We'll go on to the third slide. The cylinder, it is 9 inches in length and 4 inches in diameter, with 45 lines of preserved text, and some of the lines are incomplete, and there are a number of missing lines. The original one is right over here in the London Museum, and it says right there, the first Universal Charter of Human Rights. And the replica of that is in the United Nations building. This was presented by Iranian Princess Asha Pahlavi on this day, and when she presented it, she was talked about tolerance and human liberty. So the clay cylinder was discovered in ancient ruins of Babylon in 1879 by Hormuzd Rassam. This is the gentleman over here. I believe he's a Christian. Of Babylon in 1879. It is a record of Cyrus's declaration in 539 BCE, and we will see a video about it. Cyrus was welcomed by the people of Babylon. After 70 years of exile in Babylon, the Jews started returning to Jerusalem. Cyrus started building the second temple of Jerusalem with Persian treasury. He's praised in the Bible, ending Jewish exile in Babylon. And the text is dense in Akkadian cuneiform. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you video clips, which is nothing but a kind of a reference to what I'm all talking about. So it fortifies my text. And here's the first video. This video is by Neil MacGregor. He's one of the foremost authorities. He's the world authority on Cyrus's cylinder, and he's also the curator of the London Museum.
The Empire of Iran, the Medes and the Persians united under Cyrus, became the first great world empire. This empire is, in fact, the Middle East as we now know it, and it's what shapes the Middle East as we now know it. Cyrus sets up a model of how you run a great multinational, multi-faith, multicultural society. And Cyrus makes a declaration. And that is what this cylinder is. This object is one of the great declarations of a human aspiration. It stands with the American Constitution. It certainly says far more about real freedoms than Magna Carta. It is a document that can mean so many things for Iran and for the region.
Okay, so now we will see a lot of Neil MacGregor in this presentation, so you'll hear more about him. And oh boy, anyway, I'll get on to the PowerPoint now. Okay, so now what is the main impact of Cyrus and cylinder on human rights? That is the most important thing to know. It was the first charter in recorded history on human rights, and it was very peaceful. And we'll see how peaceful it was. Emancipation, freedom from slavery and forced labor, repatriation of the captives, the Jews that were displaced in Babylon, to be displaced people to go back to Jerusalem, freedom of worship, religion, culture, and civil rights. This is the centerpiece of the human rights. Returned all seized goods and repaired ruined temples. Now, women equality. You would be surprised to know that women were serving in his army in big positions as well as in his administration. And also the fact, and what we are struggling now, women were given full paid leave, maternal leave for a year during his time. It does not happen today anywhere in the world as a general rule. So you see how far ahead he is of his times. He repatriated Jews, started building the second temple of Jerusalem in 538 BCE, which was completed by Darius in 515 BCE with Persian treasury. And you see the wall over here? This is the second temple of Jerusalem that was started by Cyrus and completed by Darius. This is the Wailing Wall, the most sacred part for the Jews over here. And it had undergone a lot of damage, so it was repaired during Herod the Great. But this is the Wailing Wall, which is second temple of Jerusalem. Darius' success after success all gave freedom of religion, and all emperors are collectively mentioned 73 times in the Bible. So some important points on the cylinder. What is given on the cylinder? Cyrus shepherded people's subjects with justice and righteousness. You see that coming over and over again. God ordered him to go to the city of Babylon. God made him enter Babylon without battle or bloodshed. And I will read that out to you later on. Cyrus saved Babylon from hardship. All people of Babylon kissed at his feet and praised his name. I did not permit anyone to frighten the people. I sought the welfare of the city of Babylon. I returned the images of God to their places. Now, I have given, and you all have a handout. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time to cover everything. So his declaration is in the handout. And if anybody is interested, they can get in touch with Mani and she will email it to you. So that is one declaration. And the second part of it is very interesting. It is a chorus by Verdi that was composed in 1841. It is in the opera Nabucco. Nabucco stands for Nebuchadnezzar, the tyrant king who took Jews as captives to Babylon. And there is a very, very poignant chorus, which is Va Pensiero, and it talks about the lamentations of the Jews to go back to Jerusalem. If you have time, please go. It's only for 5 minutes. Now we come to the Old Bible. Cyrus's birth was predicted 150 years before he was born. Cyrus is the anointed one in the Bible. The anointed one is the one that is given a divine task by Lord the God. As you saw in the video, he's mentioned 23 times in the Bible and alluded to more. He's also mentioned in the Quran. And this is this figure over here, kind of the winged angel, if you will, that is known as Dhul Karnain, and that is in Surah verses 83 to 101. And how did he rule a multicultural empire? When he conquered, he did not take anybody as prisoners. In fact, he made adversaries as his advisors. Now, there is a special Cyrus special, Fezana. They published it in 2013, and you all have a link to it. It's a treasure trove for Cyrus, and all of you should make it a point to read it. He practiced Zoroastrian teachings, that is according to Richard Fry. Richard Fry, of course, is a well-known scholar. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2014, and he taught at Harvard University, and he was a real scholar on Oriental studies. Now, I will read out a quote to you in 45.1, and I'll explain it to you later on. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped, to subdue nations before him and strip kings of their robes, to open doors before them, and the gates shall not be closed. I will break in pieces the doors of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness and riches hidden in secret places, so that you may know that it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who call you by your name. The significance of that is Lord the God is promising Cyrus that he's going to remove all the barriers for him to enter Babylon in peace, which he did, and that is declared. So people welcomed him when he approached Babylon, when he went to Babylon. Aha! Now we come to this money talk about Chamber of Commerce. I thought this was a very, very important segment to add. And you will be surprised how much legacy Darius the Great has left us. He is known for his administrative and commercial genius. He divided the kingdom into 20 provinces that was governed by satraps. Satraps is nothing but state governors appointed by Darius, who collected all the taxes according to the economic function of each state. And it is the same concept that is followed in federalism and dividing the country into states or counties wherever you are. Now, he was a great proponent of agriculture and irrigation. He introduced uniform currency with gold and silver coinage. You see this particular thing that he introduced. Up to now, there is supposedly a barter system. Now there is a medium of exchange. So say for one coin of gold, you can buy so many bags of wheat, I don't know, or something like that. And that is important for trade today. He introduced standard weights and measures. So anywhere you go and shop in grocery or fill up your gas tank, you say that you have filled up 10 liters of gas maybe, or bought a pound of meat for say $5 or something like that. That was all initiated by Darius. And can you imagine the legacy that is in around the world today? Because anywhere you go, no matter where you go, whether it is in North Korea or even in China, you do have a medium of exchange, and you do exchange that for weight and measure. He was an architect of major projects and the Royal Trade Route. I will show that to you in a little while in the next slide. He innovated the postal services. Just imagine, I just read a statistic yesterday, and you can imagine this legacy. In just one day, the US Postal Service, I'm just talking about the US Postal Service, handles 421 million articles for postage. And then you have Amazon, you have UPS, and all the other things that go around that were innovated later on, right? So he joined Asia and Europe by waterway, and we'll see that in the slide. And trade and commerce is a ubiquitous legacy, which is a Darius, and then that is followed by a Darius proclamation, which is in the link. So I want to talk to you about this legacy. It is so ubiquitous. There is no corner in the world that it is not used as legacy. And therefore, you can see how Zoroastrian legacy is pervading in the four corners of the earth. And I thought that would be important, since this is a Chamber of Commerce presentation. So here you go. This is the Great Royal Road. Now you can compare it to the modern expressway, except in those expressways, there were camels riding on that, of course, you know. He made 111 caravanserais, which were a forerunner of the hospitality industry, and they were well secured, as a matter of fact. Now we come to this waterway canal, and this is how he joined. He says over here, I'm Persian from Persia. I seized Egypt. I gave order to dig this canal from by name by Nile, which flows in Egypt, to the sea, which goes from Persia. Okay, and this is all that. Now, it was initially, done by the pharaohs, and we'll see this in the next slide here. This was known as the Canal of the Pharaohs before Darius, much before Darius, but they did not connect it to Asia. Darius connected the waterway to Asia that now led through a tributary of the Nile flowing into the Mediterranean Sea. And you can see the innovation that he made for international trade. And that is very important as far as commerce and trade is concerned. So now we have finished the first segment, right? I would rather see if there are any things in the chat and see that all these concepts are good, because this lays the foundation of the future presentation. And that's why if there is anything that is not clear, Money, if you can erase me from the chat, I can clear it right now, or otherwise I can go on with the presentation. I'll go on then. I'll answer the questions later on. Thank you. Okay. So we come to the second segment over here, and it starts with the Cyropedia. This is very important because it is the education and biography of Cyrus. Now, what happened was, in those days, the Greek authors used to come to Persia, see how everything is managed, and go back to the Greece, and then, leave out something and add something, and then they call it Greek philosophy. No, nothing is Greek philosophy. They were great copycats of all the things that were done in Persia in the ancient times, right? So it was an education by Cyrus written by Xenophon in 370 BC. I will come to this part of business leadership later on. He was a student of Socrates, and he gives an eloquent account of Cyrus in Cyropedia in 9 books. Book 1 talks about Cyrus, that was taught by Father Cambyses, again, wisdom and righteousness. It served as a manual of leadership to Alexander, Caesar, Caesar, Machiavelli, and the United States. And it's a manual of effective governance Cyrus was a ruler of moral exemplar, according to Xenophon, according to this. Now let's talk about business leadership. Not only it is for political advantage, but have you heard of Peter Drucker? I'm sure, because if you've done management, Peter Drucker is an authority on corporate leadership. What he is saying, that is his words, that the best manual for business leadership and corporate leadership is Cyropedia. And there again, you see how this intertwines, that each are feeding off each other, that you have a manual of leadership by Cyropedia that kind of goes into trade and commerce. And trade and commerce, they flourish because of freedom. And freedom, again, goes into the trade and commerce routes and everything. So it talks about private property and a lot of other things. So they feed off each other. And that is why this connection is important. And I hope I've made myself clear with this. Now, there is a genre of this literature which is known as Mirror of the Princes. That is a genre of the Cyropedia, and that was adopted by Islam and Byzantine Empire. This is the literature that they've got. Now, this is very interesting. This talks about the Magna Carta, which is a great charter. Up to now, the church had total control over the people, over the freedom of the people. And except the common people, the clerics were above the law. So the people got fed up of it. And at the threat of civil war, King John was forced to give the Magna Carta, that is the Individual Rights Charter, which guaranteed the separation of church and state and gave equality of law and justice to everybody. Cyrus guaranteed individual rights as well as community rights, like, repatriating the Jews back to Jerusalem. But the Magna Carta specifically deals with individual rights. Now we have this, our star person coming. This is Neil McGregor, and he's on an interview with Christian Amanpour. And you all know about Christian Amanpour. She needs no introduction. Why can't I go this? Well, anyway, I'll go to the next.
It's a very odd historical phenomenon. And the same in the United States, because when the founding fathers in the 18th century are trying to decide how you will run the United States, what role will religion play, this is the model. We know that Jefferson had 2 copies of the biography of Cyrus in his library. He tells his grandson that he should start by studying the life of Cyrus. The United States Constitution is in many ways a reflection of these ideas, that if you want people to live peacefully together, you need to allow different kinds of religion in the same state. So it's very odd that Iran and the US are in this state at the moment, because they each share the same founding principles.
I heard you say that the Cyrus Cylinder is even more important in terms of governance, in terms of human rights, in terms of a freedom document than the American Constitution or even the Magna Carta.
Well, it's much older than either of them, of course, which has to be said. But the three...
But as evolved.
The three do deserve to be put together. The Cyrus Cylinder, Magna Carta, and the American Constitution, because they're all a dream of what a society could be, what a society should be. And they're all dreams that the different countries have fallen away from in different ways.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of, show you that. And now, all right. Now I can't get rid of this guy. I don't know why, but I'll continue. So here we are. We are talking about the Enlightenment era, and Enlightenment era is again the reasoning of science, and we'll see how that affected. Copernicus in 1543 starts ushering the era of science, which is an Enlightenment era. Isaac Newton published Principia Mathematica in 1686. Now the people are saying that we have intellectual powers and reasoning to tell us what is happening. We don't need the church to tell us that it is the sun that is revolving around the earth when it is the other way around. So what that leads to is the Enlightenment era, and the US independence and French Revolution is a product of that. But please remember, when these thinkers and philosophers and leaders are thinking as to how to rule a multi-religious, multicultural, multilingual empire peacefully, they only can fall back on Cyropedia. And that is where Cyropedia is very important even in the Enlightenment era. The founding fathers who contributed towards independence, that's all of them over here, Washington, Madison, Adams, Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is considered the most important founding father, considered Cyrus his ultimate hero. He kept 2 copies of Cyropedia. He asks his grandson and other founding fathers to read the Cyropedia. And this is also very interesting. Franklin saw the Avesta in London and sent it to then Yale president 1750 for its moral message. According to Fry, again, we come to Fry again, founding fathers were avid readers of Cyropedia. They drew inspiration from Cyrus as an ideal ruler. It serves as their leadership manual, and they adopted federalism, which we were talking about during Darius's time. Cyropedia was in libraries of Ben Franklin and Adams. Jefferson asked students of University of Virginia federal employees to read the Cyropedia. We will see that in a video very soon. Jefferson drafted Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom in 1777, which later became a cornerstone of Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments of the American Constitution. It firmly established separation of church and state. And this is again what Fry says, that Cyrus embodied Zoroastrian teachings. Now we will come to the second interview with another segment, and it is by the same person, and Christian Amanpo.
So they were very eager that it traveled to the United States.
So in sum, Cyrus and his heir Darius and on for about 200 years, they represented a multicultural, multi-faith tolerance. Is that what? In
Yes.
sum up what they represented.
What they represent is the first recognition, I think, that if you're going to run a society with people of different languages, different beliefs, you cannot impose by force one system. You need to find a way of getting the consent of your different peoples by recognizing their diversity. And that is the question that we all now have to address when we live in a world city like London. We have hundreds of different nationalities, languages, different religions living together. The model of a state that can accommodate that difference, there's only been one empire that really ever did it, and it is the ancient Persian one. That's why I think it's become again a period of history that people want to study, and that we all realize we can learn from. How did the Persians, for several centuries, hold together this extraordinarily diverse group of people in moderate peace and in great prosperity?
I really am fascinated about how Thomas Jefferson was so devoted to it as well, and had, as you say, copies of the biography of Cyrus. And I've read that that biography was required reading for all who wanted to go into governance and politics, along with Machiavelli, yes, certainly in the 18th century.
Yes. But it's not just Jefferson, it's not just Machiavelli. By the time you get to the 18th century, everybody in Europe is interested in Cyrus. One of the best sellers in Enlightenment France is Les Voyages de Cyrus, translated, written in both English and French by the same author.
The Travels of Cyrus.
Travels of Cyrus. The Travels of Cyrus. We know that there's Icelandic poems about Cyrus. Icelandic poems about Cyrus in the 18th century. It is impossible to exaggerate what he meant in the Enlightenment world, the world out of which the American Constitution is born.
Okay, so that was that. Enlightenment world, everything is Cyrus, Cyropedia. Right. So now we will go on to the next slide now. Okay, this is from the Fazana Special magazine that I'm talking to you about, that the subscription on 2013. It says there, with 2 prominent attorneys, and this is their opinion, that Cyrus's true gift to Jefferson was refrain from exercise of power. The First Amendment has 2 aspects of religious pluralism: free exercise of religion and bar establishment of religion. Their existence has endowed freedom of worship. America has been successful in adopting Cyrus's model. This is the opinion of those attorneys. And the freedom of religion model later was adopted in the Indian Constitution. Cyrus understood that only the strong can be tolerant, and this celebrated freedom remains our most sacred inheritance. You see this consent of the governed and the separation of church and state. Now, this is interesting. This is the Wadiyas. They are a very well-known business institution in India. We all know that. And they started business somewhere in the early 17th century. And in the 18th and 19th century, they built many, many sailing ships like this. They built 325 ships, which were a great edge against Napoleon. This is according to the British Archives Journal. And that sustained European democracy because Napoleon was defeated. It's a very important contribution of the Wadiyas in that. But what we are talking about over here is this beautiful ship Minden, which was built by Jamshedji Wadiya. It took 10 years to build this. And it went in service from 1812 to 1815 in the American War over disputes in Chesapeake Bay. There was heavy bombardment of Fort McHenry on this particular date that we are seeing over here. And Francis Scott Key, an American lawyer, went on the Minden to release a prisoner, but he was detained on board because of the heavy bombardment. Now, the next morning when he got up, he was rejoiced to see this American tattered flag flying, and he made the lyrics of Star Spangled Banner on that ship. And that we will see in a video right now. Yeah, I just wanted to show you Jamshedji Wadiya, and we'll get on with the rest of the presentation. So now we come to the third segment. And that is all about Mahatma Gandhi and the legacy of Parsis directly to Gandhi and indirectly through Gandhi to Martin Luther King and Obama. But before that, we'll see a statement of a couple of luminaries over here. This is His Eminence Cardinal Go, who hailed the Zoroastrian for faith and tolerance. This is him in Singapore in June 22. And His Excellency Prince Philip, the late Prince Philip, he says that I've heard tremendous contribution of Zoroastrians made to this country. He's talking about the UK, of course. And that statement he made in 2011. But before we talk on Gandhi, we have to see the journey of the human rights, and we'll see this because it's important how Gandhi got inspired with human rights.
Is there supposed to be a list somewhere I should be aware of?
According to the United Nations, there are a total of 30 human rights, which are usually lumped together and called simply human rights. They're all listed out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the world's most widely accepted document on the subject. But it was a long time in coming. At first, there were no human rights. If you were in with the right crowd, you were safe. If you weren't, well, you weren't. But then a guy named Cyrus the Great decided to change all that. After conquering Babylon, he did something completely revolutionary. He announced that all slaves were free to go. He also said people had the freedom to choose their religion, no matter what crowd a king to agree that no one can overrule the rights of the people, not even a king. People's rights were finally recognized, and they were now safe from those in power. Had become natural rights. Unfortunately, not everyone was so thrilled. In France, a general named Napoleon decided to overthrow the new French democracy and crown himself emperor of the world. He almost succeeded, but the countries of Europe joined forces and defeated him. Human rights was again a hot topic. They drew up international agreements, broadly granting many rights across Europe. But only across Europe. The rest of the world somehow still didn't qualify. Instead, they got invaded, conquered, and consumed by Europe's massive empires. But then a young lawyer from India decided enough was enough. His name was Mahatma Gandhi, and in the face of violence, he insisted that all people of Earth...
Okay, we have to get on with the presentation now. That was Mahatma Gandhi and his journey to human rights. So, Gandhi completed his legal studies in England, and he was on a one-year contract in Durban in 1893. Traveling train by first class, the police constable forced him out because he was a colored person, and Gandhi then stayed back and fought racial segregation. But throughout his stay over here, this is the person who is of interest over here. This is Rustamji Gorkhodu. You can see him in a feta over here. Oh. Okay. And he backed Gandhi to the hill at the risk of his life, at the risk of his family's life, at the risk of his assets. He still backed up Gandhi. Not only that, he saved Gandhi's life at least on 2 occasions. He mentored, sponsored, financed Gandhi from 1893 to 1940. Then Gandhi came to India, and then you know the support he got from the Parsis. There are numerous references. We won't go into that. You probably know all about this. But the person I really want to talk about is this giant of a man, Dadabhai Naoroji. He is known as the grand old man of India, but I would say that he is a grand old man of anti-colonialism, but that is according to the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. He was a pioneer of Indian nationalism, first Asian elected to British Parliament, first to articulate evils of colonial imperial rule, established Swaraj as his primary objective. You see how this goes on to Gandhi. It is impossible to imagine what Indian nationalist movement or global anti-colonialism would look without him. He's not given enough credit in history for that. This is according again to the same school. He was a political hero of Gandhi, and Gandhi had to take a letter of introduction to be introduced to Dadabhai Naoroji. Gandhi counted on political and financial support of the Parsis. So this is the direct legacy on Mahatma Gandhi of the Parsis. Now, indirectly through the agency of Gandhi, that legacy goes on to Martin Luther King and President Obama. And this is the last slide that I have to really show you. Now, as with Mahatma Gandhi, nonviolence also deeply influenced Martin Luther King. He was a Baptist minister who led the civil rights movement and considered Gandhi his hero and mentor. Now, this is a very courageous lady. This is Rosa Parks. You probably all have heard about her. Now, she had read about Gandhi as a 14-year-old schoolgirl, and she refused to vacate the front of a bus in 1955, and she was arrested because that was the racist procedure at that time. So then that followed the Montgomery bus boycott, which was led by Martin Luther King, and that led to nonviolent civil rights movement and then the Civil Rights Bill. Obama is greatly is deeply grateful to Gandhi, and we'll see that video right now.
Obama has also sought inspiration from India's father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. And on the first day of his visit to India, President Obama will pay homage to the Mahatma at Rajghat.
Years later, it was that dream that saw a man of color run for presidency and win. Barack Obama had made history.
the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one. That while we breathe, we hope. And where we are met with cynicism and doubt and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
Obama himself is deeply influenced by both Martin Luther King and Gandhi. And when in India, he will be paying homage to the father of the nation at Rajghat.
I might not be standing before you today as President of the United States had it not been for Gandhi and the message he shared and inspired with America.
Yes, so that is Obama. And you know that he was inspired by Gandhi. So now we come to these very beautiful monuments that are in Sydney Park. And that's why I told you that people of Australia have something for them too. And they can attest to that because this is recent. This is probably in the 90s. And it says all about Cyrus. It's in a Sydney Park. And they pay tribute to Cyrus with first Charter of Human Rights, the first multicultural society, Cyrus the Great, King of Persia, so on and so forth. I want to give you a little bit of idea about these icons. First of all, we have to see that this is our sun god Mithra that was adopted by Romans. And Mithraism is 90 to 92% Zoroastrianism. And Sasanian kings wore crown of Mithra on Mirgan. Now, all this text and all the references, again, I have given you in the handout, and I have no time to go into details of all that. But Lady Libertas was adopted from Mithra for justice and for light and for freedom. Now, this is one of the freed slaves. Now, in those days, the slaves used to wear what is known as a Phrygian cap, and this is when they had this bent in front. That means he was a free slave. And that idea came from Lady Libertas. This is again on top of the Capitol building. Lady Libertas is on top of the Capitol building in the United States, a kind of a Zoroastrian symbol offshoot that shines at the nation every day. And this is a very unique sculpture over here. This is the freedom sculpture that is resembling the Cyrus's cylinder. And they say that if you drive by it at about 25 to 30 miles an hour, it is in Century City that the manifestation of the Akkadian script of Cyrus's cylinder comes out, right? So, and now I have given you also in the handout the Mozart. Mozart was inspired by Zoroastrian triumph good over evil, and he has captured that in this particular. You have all heard of that work that is known as the Magic Flute, and it's just a 5-minute work that you have to hear it. I think the total kind of playing time is about 7 minutes and 17 seconds, and I've also given that link on to the handout, right? So now we come to the very end of our program, and instead of giving you a summary, I will just give you a visual collage to summarize everything. So this is Cyrus, and this is the cylinder. The replica is in the United Nations building. Cyrus was a very righteous person, and he exhibited high quality of Ashar. He is also the anointed one in the Bible. This is the Old Testament, and he gave freedom of religion to everybody. This is, of course, Darius the Great, who has left a great commerce and trade legacy for all mankind, which is practiced even today. Then we come to Cyropedia. This is Xenophon, who wrote the Education of Cyrus, and that was adopted by the founding fathers, and Thomas Jefferson considered Cyrus his hero. It guarantees the separation of church and state. This is the Bill of Rights, and this is what happened with the Magna Carta in 1215. Then we come to this beautiful ship Minden, and we all know that it was built by the Warriors, right? Now we come to Mahatma Gandhi, his journey through human rights, and he followed that because he was thrown out of the first-class compartment in South Africa, and there's a plaque in that station over there. But he was all the time supported by this person over here, Rustamji Golkuru in South Africa, at the risk of his life and at the risk of his family's life as well. Now, after coming to India, Gandhi's life was again saved by two Parsi doctors. As you know, it was Dr. Gilder and Dr. Dinshaw Mehta, who also was his wellness doctor. Then it is Martin Luther King, who was inspired by nonviolence of Mahatma Gandhi. This is Rosa Parks, who fused the Montgomery bus boycott. And this is Obama, that who was, he was inspired by Gandhi. And I left out Dada Bhai Nauroji, who was the mentor of Gandhi. He was the guide for Gandhi. And he's really the lion-hearted man as far as anti-colonialism is concerned. And that, ladies and gentlemen, ends my little presentation over here. Thank you very much to the Chicago chapter of WZCC, Mani Gandhi, Jamshed Rebetna, and our young Erved Wispy, Mr. Yasdi Tantra, who is always blasting my speeches over here on Zoroastrian.net. Richard Fryer, interviews with Christian Amanpour, Dr. James Russell, Pezana Summer 2013 edition, very important, and videos on Minden and Human Rights Organization and Obama. And Nowruz Mubarak to everybody. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And now I'm open for questions, for remarks, for criticism, anything you want, as long as you want it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. I think we have some questions in chat section. Would you like to answer those?
Yes, let me see the chat. Let me see the chat. Okay. Okay.
Does anybody have a question over here? You can write it down on that note.
Okay, this is the first question. The rebuilding of Temple of Jerusalem was actually financed by the Persian treasury, because what happened was that Cyrus did not mind doing that. He was the anointed one of God. God had asked him to take the people of Babylon back to Jerusalem and rebuild the Temple of Jerusalem. You see, he did not care about that, because remember, they were kind of controlling 44% of the world's population. They knew that they would get that money back through the satraps. So they did not worry about that it was financed by the Persian treasury. Thank you for asking that question, doctor. And then I'll go to the next question. All right. Any indication that one of the satraps was a woman? I cannot give that answer for sure. It probably was. But one thing is for sure, that during Cyrus, there were a lot of women in high administrative posts. It is possible that one of the satraps could have been a woman. I don't have definitive answer for that, but thank you for asking. Charisma, here you go. You mentioned Cyrus embodied Zoroastrian teachings. Please, could you elaborate on the fact that Marduk is mentioned? Very good question. Mentioned in the, but that there is no mention of Mazda. Was that a form of respect for the Babylonians? Exactly. You have hit the nail on the head. This is because of what you call empathy. Now, for example, if and that this talks about Cyrus's skill in dealing with the people. So, for example, if I am going on to any function or something like that, and it is very common, people from Iran always say Inshallah. That is keeping up with the custom. It doesn't mean anything, but this is a prime example. So when Cyrus goes to Babylon, he mentions Marduk, because the tyrant king Nebuchadnezzar was kind of antithesis of their worship to Marduk. He did not allow them to worship Marduk. Now here is Cyrus coming in, you're free to worship Marduk. So then he takes this example and embodies himself with Marduk himself, so that he can narrate to the people and the people will be at ease. So that is exactly, you hit the nail on the head, Karishma. Thanks you for asking that question. And can you throw further light on the Persian Daric or Siglos? Yes, the Persian Daric or Siglos. Aban Rustamji, thank you very much. So this is 20 coins of Siglos. That was the silver coins were equivalent to one Persian Daric, which is Daric. If you can see the etymology of it, is probably Darius. That is what I think. And how much gold was it? I'm not sure, if that is what you're getting at. So that is the best I can give you about the currency. Oh, Fascinating educational person. You're a great story. Oh, thank you, Sam. Rustam, thank you very much for that kind remark. All right. Any other questions, remarks, critics? I am open. From the audience?
No,
Well,
we
Sam,
don't
you've done
have
a
any more
great job of
questions.
no, Sam, you've done a great job of accumulating a lot of good information. This is really good.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Hill. It's an honor coming from you. I just want to throw you a couple of these things where we are talking about legacy. We are celebrating Nowruz. Now, I'm taking a couple of minutes over here because you'll get the full idea of legacy, and I did not want to put that in a commerce and this particular presentation. We are celebrating Nowruz. Now, our forefathers were ancient astronomers, and they were very well conversant with astronomy and astrology. 10,000 years before this particular thing takes place, you know that Jamshedji, Peshdanian dynasty, Jamshedji, he celebrated Nowruz, and we call it Jamshedji Nowruz. They were the first to fix the first point of Aries. They determined how the first point of Aries is. And that is a huge fire energy. And that is when the sun comes in alignment with Aries, you celebrate Nowruz. That is a great Zoroastrian legacy that hardly anybody is aware of. And another thing I want to tell you about the legacy is the three wise men.
The pharaohs the Egyptians did the same, right, Sam? They had
Pardon me?
great, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians,
Yes.
going to 5,000 years ago. They also had great.
No, I understand, Dr. Sarusha, and here's the thing, though. The pyramids which you see are directed as the belt of Orion, the center star, which is supposed to be the center of universe. And that, you would be surprised, actually, Zarathustra was reported to have prayed to that. But the fixation of the first point of Aries, that is, it is according to, you see in the Maryas that we see IV Antara Adari Pairi Dakyu, it is on Adari Dakyu, which is the observable universe. And now the scientists are saying that it's 93 billion light years broad. So you can see the savvy of our ancient astronomers and ancient sages that they fixed this first point of Aries. Thank you. And I was talking to you about the three Magi's. It is said in Matthew 2.1 that they were Persian Magi's, that they were Persian priests. And actually, they went to bless baby Jesus and whispered in Mother Mary's ears that this is a very precious child and he had to be saved at all costs. Hence, you see the flight to Egypt, and that is how Christianity revived after he returned from Egypt. So these are all Zoroastrian legacies, and that is the thing I wanted to point out. Now, I just want to add with Professor Russell, and this is what he says, and this summarizes what I presented. In an age when all the natural world seems to be poisoned and better than the followers of Zarathustra can recall, his teaching that man, animals, waters, plants, earth, skies, and fire are sacred. Let Zoroastrians remind the world that Druj, the lie, is the very essence of evil. And where has the Zoroastrian road taken us? And this is what we discussed just now. From the steppes of Central Asia through the Greece of Pythagoras and Socrates, to Renaissance Italy and Enlightenment Germany and England, to the storming of the Bastille and Winter Palace. To these shores, to the freedom and democracy and freedom that are treasures beyond price. A blessing that rests on the millions and thought of millions from Zarathustra to today. The ideas of the prophet have shone through the corridors of history, a light unto feet of us all. Study it, practice it, preserve it, pass it on. Do not let it go. Mazda yasno me, mazda yasno Zarathustras. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, for that excellent presentation. And those who are interested in recording, please send us an email at wzcchicago@gmail.com, and I'll let you know how to get it. Once again, thank you very much for all of you. And we will be ending this session. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much,
much.
Auntie. Thank you, Auntie Mani, for bringing us such an important session that goes with the WZCC strategy, that intellectual, economic, and social development overlaps. And in the area of that overlap is true progress. So credit to the WZCC Chicago chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Karishma.
Okay, we are signing off now, ladies and gentlemen.
Signing off, Sam. Thank you.
Signing up. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Sam.
Thank you,
Navroz,
Sam.
Navroz Mubarak, Navroz Mubarak.
Navroz Mubarak, everyone.
To all. Navroz Mubarak to all.